Alright, so let's get started on the video for the zippered ID case, which I think I'm going to rename the Zip It Janice zippered ID case. So you will print out page 8 of the pattern. You can print the whole pattern if you want. I generally only print the pattern pieces. So page 8 will be your pattern pieces. I'm going to add on here an additional cut list so that you can keep that with your pattern pieces for the other pieces that need to be cut. So first, just measure the test square to make sure that it measures an inch. If it's off at all, reprint. You want to make sure that you download the pattern to your computer and then open it using Adobe Reader and print to actual size or 100%. So you'll just go ahead and cut out your pattern pieces. And this pattern, you don't have to cut on the fold. I've included a full pattern piece since it's so small. And this looks big for just like a little card pouch, but there is 1/2 inch seam allowance included in this, so really it isn't that big. I have my embroidery machine running in the background. So the pattern comes with 2 embroidery files. Obviously it's optional for you to use them. No need. The embroidery machine is not needed to sew the pouch. It's only for those 2 designs. So there's one design that is, it just says fabric money. And I embroider that on the front main panel. And then there's another embroidery design that is for a zipper charm that looks like a $sign. So right now I'm embroidering my exterior main panel to say fabric money. And what I like to do is to just fuse a rectangle of fabric to the woven interfacing that's required. And then I embroider on that one and then cut it both out at the same time. So that way my embroidery is positioned how I want it on my finished case, rather than cutting it out and trying to place the piece of fabric in the hoop perfectly. Okay, so I just cut out both of my pattern pieces. And the fabric that I'm using today is a Riley Blake, let's see, it's called Riley Blake Gemstones. I purchased this from So Weird Fabric. I'll tag them in the comments. She has an awesome group on Facebook and has sales all the time on her fabric. She has a lot more knit fabrics than woven, but it seems to be getting more woven fabrics. I just buy a lot of my fabrics from there. So the way this fabric is, it's like gradient, and you get all these different colors in just the one piece of fabric. So I'm just going to use this for everything, but just cut the different pieces out from different areas. So I cut my front exterior main panel section from this part here, so it's going to be this dark purple. So I'm going to cut my back exterior piece from the same part. So there's a few different ways that you can cut your fabric out. If you choose to, let's see if I need to get that centered. Okay, so you can trace your fabric onto, I would trace it onto the wrong side, but you can lay the pattern down. I don't have a fabric pencil here, but you can just trace around the pattern piece and then, you know, cut it out with scissors. You can pin your pattern piece to the fabric and then cut it out. I just like to use a rotary cutter to cut my pieces, and oftentimes I'm out right now, so I just use regular paper. I'll print my pattern pieces on like a cheaper white cardstock, and then that's easier to cut around. Alright, so I just carefully cut around the pattern piece with my rotary cutter. Just keep your fingers out of the way. Sounds like my embroidery design is done. Okay, so there I have my, that'll be like my exterior main panel for the back. Okay, so this design is friendly for a 4x4 hoop. I'll cut the jump stitches off later. So just remove, I use just a tearaway stabilizer. It's actually Pelham brand, I think, that I buy from Joann's. It doesn't matter if you get all this out of the bag. I just remove as much as possible so that it's not obvious from the front that it's in there. Okay. Alright, so like I said, I'll cut those jump stitches later. But there's your fabric money design. And this way, keep in mind that there's a 1/2 inch seam allowance around this. It's a 1/4 inch at the top where the zipper's attached. But when you place this on your fabric, you don't want to have any part of your design get cut off in the seam allowance. So just keep that in mind. Alright, and then place your pattern piece where you want it to be. And then I'll iron that as well from the back side so that it's not kind of puckered up like that. But so now I have my fabric money embroidery design placed where I want it. And I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of the pieces. For my lining pieces, I'm going to use this more orange section of the fabric. And probably, well, I'll probably use that for my accent. So the back pocket is cut from the same main panel piece, and I'm going to use this orange for that. Lining, maybe I'll do pink. And then you also have 2 squares of fabric. Rectangles. So you have a zipper tab, which is 2 inches by 3 inches. So you'll just cut that with a ruler, or you can measure it and draw it onto your fabric. I want that to be this orange color, so I'm just placing my ruler. It's 3 inches wide, and then 2 inches, and actually a little bit more than 2 inches, and I'll trim off that uneven edge. So line this up, 2 inches in, and then I'll just trim off that edge. So there's your 2x3 piece, and then you have a 2x2 piece. Wait, I think this is my zipper tabs. This is why I'm going to include a little list of what else needs cut. So then the other piece will be 2x2. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out here too. This is my keyring connector, is the 2x2 piece, and the 2x3 is the zipper tabs, I think. I'll make sure that I have that correct. So just go ahead and cut all of your pieces out of fabric and then woven interfacing. I use Shape Flex 101, and the pattern pieces list on them what you need cut out of the fabric and what you need cut out of the interfacing. So cut according to that. For the vinyl, let's go over that real quick. I'm going to use, I have this clear glitter vinyl that I purchased from So Hungry Hippie. She has like a lot of really fun vinyls in her shop. Clear glitter, some that's like clear with little hearts on it, colored clear. So, all right, I'm just going to line that up. This is already cut straight from something else I cut out. And if it's a little wrinkly like it is, I usually just run my hot iron over the ironing board and get it nice and hot, and then kind of lay the vinyl down on the hot ironing board, and it usually flattens out. So, see right now it's wrinkled, so that's what I'll do with that. Alright, so I'm going to cut out everything else, and then we'll meet back up over at the ironing board. Okay, we are back at the ironing board. So I have, this is what I cut out as my panel, or my pocket. These are my pocket panels. So it's contrasting for my exterior. Only one of those will be interfaced. So I have my Shape Flex woven interfacing. I like to spray it with water. Definitely follow the directions on whatever woven interfacing that you use. I think you could also use like a fusible fleece on this, maybe cut out of the seams. It could be cute if you fused fleece to it and then quilted it. I would maybe leave off the back pocket that way. Yeah, but that could be cute too. Okay, so interfacing is fused to that piece. This is what I cut as my lining. And I'm just going to iron those, no interfacing. And I didn't interface everything in this because I wanted to keep it lightweight. It's just a tiny small project. So here I have my keyring connector, which is 2 inches by 2 inches, and I will fuse the interfacing to that piece. Okay, and then we have our zipper tabs piece, which will not have any interfacing. And then my other exterior main panel, which will get one piece of woven interfacing. You could also fuse your interfacing on a steam press if you have one. That saves some time. Alright, so I have everything fused. I have my fabric money. I went ahead and trimmed those jump stitches off, and I pressed this from the back. You just want to be careful because your embroidery thread can melt. And then I have my ID pocket. So what I do for that is just get the ironing board nice and hot, and then I lay this on top, and that will help the wrinkles to come out. Makes it soft and pliable. You could also use a blow dryer or sit it in the sun, I believe, but it's freezing cold out right now, so I don't think the sun will help. So there we go. Everything is ready to sew. I'll get out a zipper, and then we'll meet at the sewing machine. Okay, so let's get ready to make our zippered ID case. So step number 1 is making the zipper tabs piece. It is 3 inches long and 2 inches wide. So I already went ahead and pressed this, but what you'll do is fold it in half, bringing the 2 3-inch sides together, and press to make a crease. And then you will open that back up and press each of those 3-inch edges into that center crease, and then press again along that original center crease to fold in half. So now all of your 3-inch edges are enclosed inside, and it's 1/2 inch wide folded and 3 inches long. So now what you're going to do is cut this in half to make 2 pieces. and now you want to cut your zipper to exactly 5 inches in length. You want to keep the zipper pull on, and we're going to cut off the stops. I just have, I think, a 12-inch zipper. So we are going to just cut that end off. And then move your pull down so that you don't cut it off. This. Usually I would lay it on my mat and just cut it with a rotary cutter. So. Okay, so exactly 5 inches. Now we are going to attach the zipper tabs. So what you'll do is open one of the tabs, slide the end inside, and then fold it around. You can place a clip on to hold that in place so that you can sew it. Another thing you could do, I like to use glue sticks a lot in sewing. So if you open up your tab and put some glue inside, and this is just a washable Elmer school glue. All right, so now that will hold it in place. And we are going to top stitch this. I have my stitch length set to 4 right now. And you're sewing right over the zipper, so if you're using a metal zipper, you'll want to hand crank over that part so that you don't break your needle. And then after we sew these on, we'll trim the edges of the zipper tabs off so that it's even with the width of the zipper. Alright, so on this end, the teeth are separated. So I just make sure that I push those together when I place it in the tab. And you're putting this all the way into the fold on the tab, so it's all the way pushed in. All right, and then we'll top stitch that and just make sure you hold those two ends of the zipper together. So our zipper is all prepared. That's step 2. So now on to step 3. We are going to make the keyring connector and add the keyring. So I have these keyrings, I believe are, the bag doesn't list the size. They're larger than a regular keyring. I just like the size of those. I think, let's see what the diameter is. About 1 1/4 inch if you measure the outside. So I think a regular keyring is more like 1 inch. Okay, so here's my keyring connector. This is a 2 inch by 2 inch piece. It is interfaced. So you make this the same way the zipper tabs were made. You fold it in half, bringing 2 of the 2 inch sides together and press. Open it up. Fold each of those 2 inch edges into the center crease and press, and then fold in half again and press. And now you have a 1/2 inch by 2 inch piece. And we are going to top stitch along each folded edge of this. So I always top stitch the folded edge where I'm bringing the 2 pieces together first to hold it closed, and then, if that makes sense, and then the other solid fold. I'm using my snips today that I got from Havel's Sewing. I will link these in the comments. They come with a lanyard, which is really nice. You can wear it around your neck if you choose to. so that you don't lose them, I just hang it from my thread stand on my sewing machine, and then I keep these there so they don't get lost, which is super handy because I lose everything. Okay, so now we'll fold this in half, bringing the raw edges together, and slide our key ring into the fold. And then we're going to baste the raw edges together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just to hold that closed and to keep that key ring on. Okay, so now on to step 4. We are going to take the clear vinyl ID pocket panel and the interfaced slip pocket panel. So my slip pocket panels were the orange ones. One is interfaced, one is not. So take the one that is interfaced, and I'm going to press this in half to find the center. Finger press, that's just the easiest way. And then I have my ID pocket vinyl, which you can do the same thing to find the center of that. And we want this to be 3/4 of an inch down from the top and centered. So right there looks about right. And what I do is use washi tape to hold that in place. All right, masking tape could work. Just make sure to test whatever tape that you do use on a scrap of your vinyl to make sure that it doesn't leave any residue behind. And this is okay to sew through. Also, I haven't had any issues. I'm just going to put it in a couple spots to kind of hold it on, and then I'll probably pull it off, but it will perforate if you sew through it and pull off easily after sewing then. Okay, so we want to start on this end. We want to leave this end open, which will be the end where the key ring is. So that way when it's being carried, it's this way and your card can't slide out. So just start at the bottom. And all of my top stitching is using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And you might want to use, we'll see if this sticks. You might want to use a Teflon foot for this because a regular sewing foot can stick to the vinyl. Seems okay. Somebody mentioned before that she did not have washi tape. And when she did her ID pocket, she used the sticky part of Post-it notes and kind of held it in place with that, and that worked the same way. So if you do use a Teflon foot, all that is a foot made out of a plastic, and the bottom is coated in Teflon so that it's slick and it won't stick to the vinyl. It's very smooth. This seems to be okay with my regular foot this time. I think it probably depends on the humidity and stuff. And then make sure you always back stitch at the start and stop of your stitches. Hopefully the lighting is okay. It's sunny out, and I don't know, maybe just the way the sun is hitting it makes it seem dark in here almost. All right, and we'll go ahead and peel our tape off. See how it just perforates where you sewed through it and it rips off easily. You could also make this like a super fast project by skipping the embroidery and skipping the ID pocket and skipping the back pocket even. That makes it really fast. Okay, so next we're going to install snaps. And again, this is optional. If you don't want snaps on yours, you don't need to do that. I am going to, let's see. So here's my main panel piece, main panel pattern piece. I'm going to just put a hole in the center of the snap placement. We want to install one snap on the lining slip pocket panel that's uninterfaced and one on the back main panel piece. So let's see, I can't really use. Alright, so I have this whole box full of cam snaps. I probably want purple, right? Purple or orange. The snap will be hidden either way, so it's not going to matter. I'm going to use this purple color. So I need 2 caps and a male and a female. So the male is the one where the part sticks out. The female is the one that receives the other part. So I'm going to place my main panel pattern piece on, this is my exterior main panel, that it's the back, not the one with the embroidery. And I'm just going to punch a hole in my fabric with this owl. I'm probably saying that all wrong. That's where I'll install one snap. And then on the other piece, this is the uninterfaced pocket piece. So what I'm going to do is put the hole in it to mark the place, but then I'm going to go to my ironing board and I'm going to fuse a scrap of interfacing to the back. Alright, so let's install the male snap in the uninterfaced pocket piece. So we'll put the cap on the back side and the male snap goes on the right side. These pliers and snaps are cam snaps. I purchased them from I Like Big Buttons. Okay, and then the other snap, the female snap, goes into the exterior main panel. And again, make sure that the snap part is on the outside of the piece, not the wrong side, the right side. Okay. So now we're going to place our 2 slip pocket panels together, right sides together. Line up all the edges, and we want to pin along the top edge only. I use Wonder Clips. These are actually generic Wonder Clips off Amazon. I think I got 100 for maybe $7 or $8. And quality wise, they seem just as good. So, okay. And we are using a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. I use a shorter stitch length when I'm sewing things together than I do top stitching, so I changed it to a length of 3. And I back stitch always at my start and stops. Okay, we're going to trim the seam allowance down to about 1/4 inch just to reduce some of the bulk in the seam. And now we'll flip these wrong sides together. And I'm going to press that very carefully without melting my snap or my vinyl. Alright, now we'll top stitch along the top edge only using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Be careful sewing next to your snap because it could get in the way. You might find it easier to top stitch from the wrong side. The foot that I'm using is a narrow zipper foot, I believe it's called. And I 99% of the time just leave this foot on for everything. This definitely can be made on a domestic sewing machine. You don't need an industrial machine for this at all. Alright, so we have that top stitched. Now we are going to, let's see, that was step number 7. Step number 8. Let's snap the slip pocket to the exterior main panel. And we are going to line up the bottom and side edges. And we'll clip that in place. All the way around. Okay, and now we're going to baste that together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So to baste, I'm just using my longest stitch length, which is a 5. These stitches are not meant to hold together the finished product. They're only to hold everything together and keep things from shifting as you sew. Okay. All right, and now we're going to baste our keyring connector in place. So I have the marks for the connector placement on the pattern piece. So you can go ahead and mark that on your fabric. I'm just going to lay that right there in place. And then you'll just want to baste that again at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this is being basted to the left, no, the right side. My other left. Okay, so now we are on to the zipper. So with the exterior main panel right side up, we're going to place the zipper right side down, and we want the zipper closing to this side. And that's important as well, so that way when your zipper is, if your zipper's maybe not closed quite all the way, your stuff won't be falling out of the bottom when this is hanging from a key ring. So what we want to do is to center this in place. You can fold your zipper to mark the centers, and then also fold this to mark the center right along the top. And then we'll just clip this together. Okay, and now we're going to sew that together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And if you're using a regular foot for the rest of it, you'll want to put your zipper foot on at this point. And if you need to stop with your zipper or with your needle down, and you can pull the zipper out of the way. Okay, now you will take one of your lining main panels and place that right side down on top of this. And we're going to sew this together all the way across the top, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance as well. And I like to sew from this side so that I can make sure I'm sewing over the stitching from attaching the zipper. You can move that zipper pull out of the way again. All right, now we're going to press both of these panels away from the zipper. All right, and then we're going to top stitch along that edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Or I'm sorry, 1/8 of an inch. Grab my Now we're going to repeat the same process. That was step 11. We're going to repeat the same process on the others to attach this. So what you can do, if you feel confident that things are not going to shift out of the way, I mean, you've made a few things maybe and you're fine with it, you can layer everything together and just sew it across once. I like to do it this way. I guess if I'm in a rush, I would just sew across one time. I've definitely done it before. But it cuts down on the time. So once you've made a couple and you're confident with it, or if you've been sewing, there's no reason not to do that. Okay, so I'm going to pull the zipper pull out of my way to get this started, and then I'll move it back. And again, we're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and whenever you stop to adjust anything, stop with your needle in the down position. All right, and then take our other lining main panel, place it right side down on top of everything. And then I'm going to sew from this side to make sure I go over the stitching from attaching the zipper. Okay, let me move that zipper pull out of the way again. Okay, now I'm going to press both of these panels away from the zipper as well. Being careful again not to touch my embroidery. All right, now we're going to top stitch along the zipper on that side. Okay, now on to step 13. So we want to unzip the zipper, very important, because that's how we'll turn it right side out. And now we're going to place the exterior panels right sides together. And the zipper, will be, let's see, pushed toward the lining, and the seam allowance will be pushed toward the exterior. So I will show you what I mean by that in a second. Let me clip around this first. I tried to make the diagram in the pattern kind of see-through so that you can maybe see what's going on. Okay, so you see the seam allowance will be toward the exterior. These are our lining panels, and the zipper is pushed in toward the lining panels. Okay, and that's important for you to get the correct finish. And that was one of the parts that I think with different zipper pouches that I would always mess up on, because I could never remember which way it should be. So you want your zipper pushed toward the lining. And we're not sewing through the zipper, just next to it. So, and your seam allowance is pushed toward the exterior. Okay, and we want to leave a 3-inch hole in the bottom to turn this right side out. So that's about 3 inches. I'm not actually going to mark it. So shorter stitch length, which I use a 3, and we'll start sewing at the bottom corner. And make sure that you backstitch at the start and stop very well, because you will be turning this whole thing out through this hole, turning it right side out, so it can strain those stitches. Make sure you backstitch. We're using a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. All right, and as you get to those, the ends of the zipper, you can feel here where the end of it is. You will sew directly next to that, but not through it. So it can be helpful to use your zipper foot for this part so that you can get really close to that without going through. And just keep using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you notice, I stop and readjust with my needle down, always going around the curves to keep the curve nice. And I just lift the foot up every couple of stitches and readjust it. If you wanted to pouch with square corners instead of rounded, it could be easy to, you know, just on your pattern piece, square these off. That would make it even easier because you're not sewing around any curves. Okay, right here is the key ring connector. So when you sew over that, that part's a little bit thicker. And I like to back stitch just to help secure that. All right, and then here's the zipper again. And we're going to again sew right next to the zipper, but not through it. All right, and we're back to the other side of the lining. And we're just going to back stitch a few times there to really secure that well. All right, so let's trim our threads. All right, and now I'm going to trim the seam allowance. You will not trim along the opening that you left. So I usually cut in at an angle like this. And I trim this down to probably 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit longer than that. And this just helps it to sit nicely when you turn it right side out. All right, and I'm not going to trim the end of that key ring connector because that way it has a little extra security so that it's not going to fall out or get pulled out of the stitches. It's sewed in a little longer there. So you go ahead and trim down all the way around. All right, so after we turn the pouch right side out, we're going to fold in the opening and top stitch that closed. I like to press that before I turn it sometimes, and that just makes it easier for me once it's turned to line that up properly. Okay, so now this is why it's important that that's unzipped. Go ahead and push everything right side out through that zipper and through the hole that you left in the bottom. All right, it's helpful to have a turning tool. A chopstick can work. This came with a tube turner set that I purchased from Joann's. I believe it was Dritz brand, but it helps to just push that down inside, and you can press out all the seams really well. And you have to be very careful not top stitching, pressing this with the iron to make sure that you don't melt any of your vinyl. Okay, so we have the hole in the lining to close. So just push in the seam allowance in those parts. Make sure that this is pulled out completely. And we're just going to press that seam allowance in and then pin this opening closed, and you'll just top stitch right along the edge there. I just like to sew as close to the edge as I can get. If you prefer, you can hand stitch it. I'm not a fan of hand stitching, so not the look. I don't mind the look of it. It looks nice. I don't like to do it. So I shove everything under my sewing machine. All right, and then push that lining down inside really well, and then we'll give that a final press. But it's done. That's it. Just very wrinkly. Super easy, quick project. If you leave off the back pocket, leave off the ID vinyl, then it's like a really quick project. So, and then your snap pocket is here. You could keep, like, you know, a few dollars in there or whatever. I probably wouldn't keep my important cards in there just because I'd put those in the zipper part, but there you have it. Super handy to take on vacation, hook to your key ring to carry things around in. I like to use mine that I can just throw it in my pocket when I'm going into the grocery store and not have to carry my purse the whole time. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you're not in my Facebook group, please join my group. It's Sincerely Jen Patterns group, and I'll link that below. And you can share your finished projects. I have a lot of other patterns on my website also. I have one other freebie at the moment that's called the Banana Hammock Beauty Bag. So check that one out also. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.